The goal of this video is to talk about how to integrate NetBeans with GitHub. So before we go too far in terms of understanding why we'd want to have that integration, we first need to talk about what is GitHub. So when you're creating code, as you've experienced over time, there's a lot of versions of the code. So there's a lot of different. Every time you make a change, you might want to go backwards if the change isn't positive, or maybe you'll do a few different changes and then you realize an underlying change isn't good and you want to revert back to a previous version. That's one of the big benefits of version control. Another big benefit of version control, and really why it started, had to do with the fact that we have collaborative teams of people creating code. So often you'll be working with multiple people all submitting code into a common code repository. So we need tools to handle this idea of version control and multiple people being able to access the same code base. In more sophisticated setups, we have this, we won't need academically, but we'll have this idea of creating branches off of the main code base so that people can work on special projects and whatnot. On the screen here, you can see there are three popular choices for version control. One's called Subversion, another one's called Mercurial, and we also have Git. This video is really focused on Git. So there's two variants on Git. There is Git, the source control system, and then there is a nice cloud-based platform called GitHub. GitHub is actually pretty nice and easy to use, and that's what this video will focus on. So to set up your GitHub account, if you don't have one already, all you need to do is go to a web browser, and you're going to type in github.com. And this will bring you to GitHub. Now, I'm currently signed in, so I'm just going to sign out. And if you want to create a new account, you just have to pick a username, fill in an email, put in a password, and you can set up your own account. It is free for anyone. The free package ensures that you have access to the GitHub services. However, everything that you produce will be public in nature, meaning anyone can see it. If you want private repositories, you pay for that. So, for example, businesses would pay to have a private repository for their services. Or you can sign up as a student. And to get the student account, you can just type in GitHub student account. And you can get the pack, right? So you can go in here and get a private repository for students. So I would strongly recommend that you do that, since all of your academic work should be private in nature. Okay, so let's look at actually creating a GitHub repository. So repository is the name that we give to setting up a space to store your source code. So let's go here. Just got to sign in. Whoops. Okay. So here, what I'm going to do is in the upper right-hand side, I'm going to pull this down. I'm going to create a new repository. And I call it the example NetBeans integration. Put a little description. And you can see here, by default, everything's public. If I were to make it private, I do not have my account set up in such a way that I can do that right now. So what it does is it says, okay, well, it's $7 a month if you want a private account. So keep it public for now, and we'll create the repository. When you create a repository, it gives you a link to the repository. You can see that right here. And we're going to need this information when we set it up on the NetBeans side, because we have to point back to this specific spot so that the GitHub knows where to store all the files. So let's go into NetBeans, and let's just create a simple project. And I call it GitHub integration. This is sort of the equivalent of hello world. Save it, run the file, make sure it looks good. All right, gives me a nice little print statement. So now, if I want to integrate this with GitHub, what I need to do, I'm going to right-click here on the project level, go down to versioning, and say initialize a Git repository. By default, it'll assume the same root path as my actual project, so I can just say OK. And then it'll set up a repository that'll track which files have been uploaded and which ones have not. So you can see here it turns green. If I hover over it, I can actually see that this file, GitHub integration.java, is added into the repository, the local repository, but it has not been added to the cloud-based one. It's just local to my machine at this point in time. So if I want to push that up to, I need to do a couple of things. So the first thing is I'm going to have to commit it. So I'll call it the initial upload. And then the next thing I'll need to do is under the team remote, I'm going to push. And then in here, I'm going to take this information that GitHub gave us, right? So this is where we're going to store our files. So I'm going to come back, place it in here, and say next. And then I'll say, yep, select the master branch, finish. Okay, now if I go back into GitHub, so go online, and if I go to my project here, now I can see in my project, in my repository, I can see the actual source code. If I click on it, I can see there's the actual source code. And then, of course, other people would have the ability, so if I pull up a different GitHub account, I can click on that repository. Oops, go back. I can actually clone or download it, or I can just look at it in its raw state like this. So I hope that helps you understand a little bit about getting your NetBeans and GitHub accounts set up. I look forward to seeing you in class.